Hi, everyone, and welcome to Homeschool Help Desk. This is Real Life in Homeschool. I am joined by the Chips and Salsa ladies from Chips and Salsa Homeschooling. We're going to be talking about the confessions that parents have for homeschooling. Before we jump in, I would like to introduce Dee Dee and Jimena.
Hey
Hello.
guys,
I'm Dee Dee.
I'm Jimena. We like to call ourselves the Chips and Salsa ladies
Because chips and salsa go so well together.
Well, welcome. My name is Jana Cook, and I'm the community manager of Bookshark. I'm a homeschool mom of 3. My daughters are 11, 15, and 15. And boy, do I have some confessions for homeschooling for almost 5 years. But we are going to be talking about some confessions that we got from other people. So let's get started.
All right. Well, we're really excited to be part of this talk because we know that we have a lot of confessions as well. I have a daughter that's in 10th grade and a son that is in 7th. I always lose track of what grade he's in. And, you know, we've been on this homeschool journey for a while. This is my 8th year. This is like your 10th
year. 11th year.
11th year, yeah. And so we know that it's hard and it's challenging. And that's why we're excited to be here, because we have confessions of our own.
Yeah, we really can understand where you're coming from because we've been in the trenches. I have 4 kids. My oldest is in 10th grade, like hers. Then I have a 9th grader, an 8th grader, and a 7th grader, all 4 in a row. It's big fun at our house with 4 teenagers. Well, my daughter's a preteen. She's the baby. And like she said, I started homeschooling when our oldest was in kindergarten. So that's 11 years of homeschooling. And well, I have to just confess right off the bat, I'm not homeschooling for high school. So my 2 oldest are enrolled in a private school, and it was a little bit of a bummer, but also I think good for them. So that's us.
So we put out an anonymous survey to ask homeschool parents what their struggles have been. We also asked them to give us a confession that maybe they wouldn't say out loud, but because their name wasn't on it, they could be incredibly honest about it. We want to thank everyone who participated in the survey. We want you to know that we are not here to judge or criticize. On the contrary, we are here to say we understand. We have all been there.
Yeah, so we want to thank all of our followers on Instagram who also participated in this survey.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the first thing was that 64% of the survey participants have felt like quitting at some point. And I mean, I'm one of those.
Right? I don't know who that 36% of people who haven't felt that way are, but homeschooling can be hard. And so I've definitely felt like, what am I doing with my life at many a times?
Yeah, and we'd be lying if we hadn't been threatened, if we said that we hadn't threatened our kids to send them back to school. Yeah. I did that a lot at the beginning.
Yeah, because they were going to go back to school. I would just say, you want to know what it's like to go to real school?
My daughter reminds me of how I did that
first
year of homeschooling.
Oh, man. Well, I'm not winning any awards, but
I can remember saying, I'm going to drive you down to school in your pajamas if you don't straighten up and start
drop you off.
Nice.
Just drop you off, see what they do with you.
Well, we want to start off with some of our own confessions. So you know that if you felt any of these things, you are not alone.
Yeah.
If you hear any confessions that you can resonate with, why don't you go ahead and give us a thumbs up in the chat, so we know you're here with us. So my first confession, I knew I was going to homeschool my kids, and yet I confess that my kids didn't even know their alphabet until they started kindergarten.
That's all right.
Most kids already know.
Yeah, I don't know that my kids knew the entire alphabet. I can't remember. But my confession is that I really don't like grading their schoolwork.
Yeah.
I just want them to do it, and then I trust that they're doing okay. Like grading essays for me is like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I do it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, I will confess that I feel like I am constantly failing my children. There is a rare day that I feel like I'm nailing this homeschool thing. And that's almost after 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we see you, Melissa and Alicia.
Yes. Yeah, well, there's 3 things that we want you to know. So, number 1, you're not alone, as you can see, right? We all struggle just with the daily grind, and know that other moms are going through it too. One of the things that surprised me the most when we started homeschooling is that when we would tell parents that we went through struggles, they would say, "Really? Oh, it makes me feel so good that you guys are struggling too." So sometimes I think we get into our head that we are by ourselves, that it's our own issues, and that everybody else must be doing great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just not realistic. And then number 2, that struggling is part of the journey. There's nothing wrong with you struggling. It's part of the journey, and that's how we grow and learn. It's like life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 is that it's never going to look perfect. And I think Instagram and Pinterest have done us a disservice in the sense that, I mean, they could be very great for inspiration, but then also you're just looking at the highlight reel of everybody. So like, you're not looking at me yelling at my kids, right? You're just seeing the awesome project that we did. And even my kids laugh at me. They're like, "Oh, you got to get it on the gram, Mom,
Oh, yeah.
our fake life."
Or redo that so I can get it on the ground.
Why did you do that? You just ruined my take, So that's real life, and knowing that it's messy, and for you to embrace it as what it is what's gonna make you feel like a successful homeschool parent.
Yeah. All right, Jennifer and Sharon, I see you there in the chat.
Yeah.
And Sarah, we excuse your hand raising. There's Grace. Well, let's get into some of these confessions. So, confession number 1, it's really hard to balance work and schooling. I'm glad we've tried, but we're looking forward to going back to traditional school. I don't feel like I have the patience or skill to keep my children engaged.
Yeah. Well, we fully understand what a challenge it must be to have to work full time and homeschool, because it's hard enough just to homeschool.
Yeah.
So if you started homeschooling during the pandemic and you're working full time, or even if you're not working full time, we just want to applaud you and give you a silent clap, because we don't want to bust your eardrums. But well done, because it's been hard for us, and we are seasoned homeschoolers. During the pandemic, it was hard. So
Yeah.
good job.
But we also want to say that if homeschooling is important to you, if you feel like, I do want to continue this with my kids, and you're working, Bookshark has so many great resources. There's so much support out there that you can do it. We have a podcast through Bookshark called Homeschool Your Way. We have YouTube channel, Chips and Salsa Homeschooling, with videos. And Bookshark has a blog.
Yeah.
There are resources, and you're here today. So just suck it all up.
Yes.
So when we have the day off or an off day, I say to my kids, do you want to go back to pup school? Do you want to go back to having to get up at this time in the morning, being gone all day, not being able to have snacks whenever you're hungry? These are true threats that happen in my household.
Yeah. And that was some confessions that we heard too through that anonymous survey. And we just want you to know that the first, I would say, year to 3 years are the hardest.
Yes.
And I know it's kind of, when people say, well, I tried homeschooling and it didn't work for me. Honestly, we want to say to you, if you really want to give it a go, you got to give it at least 3 years. And I know that's a really long time to commit, But really, I feel like you don't get a feel for what you even want for homeschooling until around then, and for you to feel comfortable with it as well. And she really helped me because she was homeschooling way before I was. And I remember she said, because I was like, I'm just scared that I'm going to be like yelling all day long. And she said, well, I did yell a lot the first year.
Yes.
And it kind of got less and less because you do work up. Patience is like a muscle. You work on it, and you get more patient as you are with your children more, not less, right? But what we want you to know is that homeschool, you don't have to have a homeschool gene, because we heard that a lot. We actually did an episode about that. Is homeschooling right for you? Because during the pandemic, I would get those kinds of comments like, I don't have the homeschool gene. I'm not cut out for this. This is not for me. We don't have a homeschool gene. I can assure you of that. But, that's what we want you to know, that it just, you've got to give it some time.
Yeah. And also that homeschooling during the pandemic is hard for everybody. I think Jimena already touched on it, but it's not the same. When we're homeschooling, we're out in the community. We are doing field trips. We're getting together with our friends in our community. And the pandemic has really shut down a lot of that. Extracurricular activities, sports. I mean, so much has been, kind of taken from us that, if you're feeling like some of the problems maybe that you're feeling or stress that you're feeling is not a homeschool problem, but a pandemic problem.
Right.
And Jennifer just shared about she was worried her kids are going to miss out on something. I think everybody has felt that way this year in particular. We are missing out on life. We've been quarantined in or out, depending on where you are, and separated socially. So that is a hard one to deal with.
Yeah, it's during the pandemic. And if you want to continue homeschooling, Jennifer, what I can say, just speaking from our own experience, is that you have the non-homeschool kids telling my kids, oh man, you're so lucky.
Yeah.
I've never heard a traditionally schooled child say, man, you're really missing out on a bunch of stuff. That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah.
They look into us and go, wow, you get to do that?
Well, we were just talking about how we realized our kids have been allowed to remain kids, to play, to be carefree. And in traditional school, there's so much more peer pressure, and pressure to be cool, pressure to have things, to, playing with dolls or action figures is not cool. Yeah, anymore. So, there's so many things you miss out on by going into that traditional school.
Yeah. I've met a lot of homeschool adults, and believe me, I'm interviewing them all the time, and there's some pretty amazing people out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, another confession was reading aloud is hard. This also might have been one of my confessions, and exhausting. So, tip, audiobooks. I love them. I get free audiobooks from the library. There are apps that you can download for free. There are different options at the library that you can check out. There are always the ones that you can pay for, but I am constantly looking titles on audio to really help with that exhaustion of reading aloud.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I always tell this story about when I first started homeschooling. I'm so excited. I've got our curriculum, and I've got the kids, all sitting around in a circle ready for read aloud time. And after like the third day, my voice was gone. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so exhausting to read and talk all day long. So you really have to build up that endurance, Yeah. And then just developing, routines and schedules, all of that takes time. But I'm with you on the audiobooks.
Yes.
I love, love, love audiobooks. In the car, audiobooks are great. And also the kids can read. So sometimes just taking turns reading, giving yourself a little break while you, clear your throat.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we did too was change the time of day that we read aloud, because we were doing it at the end of the day and I was finding that we were done. And I was exhausted and my daughter was in la la land somewhere and we were all grouchy. And so we changed it to the beginning of the day. That's how we start our day. And it's something that we look forward to now. We call it our cuddle block because my kids still like to cuddle with me. I won't.
Well, I have a confession.
Okay.
I have fallen asleep reading to my kids many times.
It happens.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brooke is saying that she is having a hard time keeping a routine. I would say that in my confession, that feeling of messing up, I didn't keep a good routine either. In fact, I let the routine be student-led. I decided that I didn't want to make up my kids if they didn't need to get up. They could just do it on their own as long as it was done by dinner.
Yeah. I think I agree. Every family is different. I know that my family, we are such daydreamers and constantly that we need structure. But even so, and Brooke, about the perfectionism, girl, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And it's hard when you're a perfectionist because you want to every day be so consistent and then you fail, because I think everybody does. So there are things that we've done to help. We call it like habit training and stuff. Kind of like train your brain to help you what's next. But we only have like the bones of the structure of the schedule, like chores in the morning. We're going to read aloud. Like that's really it. And then that's it. After that, everything kind of falls apart. After that, we just kind of go with the flow. We go with the flow. And I've learned to embrace the flow. That was really hard for me too at the beginning because I felt like I was failing every day. But just like you said, you've given yourself some grace, and that's what you need to do, because it's never going to look the same any day, because some days they're humans. They're going to get up in a bad mood. Other days you're going to be exhausted or you're going to be in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And then you just have to go with the flow with what the day presents and be okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and she said about paper clutter.
Oh.
I confess, I throw away a lot of the work. I don't keep a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we go to the next confession?
Yeah.
Sure. So the next confession is, I have no idea how I'm doing. I will make her write out all of her history questions and answers on paper. We hardly even review the questions. Another one was, I just want to make sure they are getting a quality education because sometimes I think I'm doing the opposite. And another was that she is grateful that they can utilize the SPED resources and continue homeschooling, but she says she feels like she's failing, that she can't address all her child's needs at home.
Yeah. And there was another one too that says, I feel like I'm messing up and there's nothing to fix it. And I think the first thing that we want to say to that is that a lot of these fears come from like even pushback from our own kids, right? Because they'll won't want to do something. And then you're like, oh, I'm just not a teacher. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to teach them. And so a lot of those fears come because honestly, we've been institutionalized ourselves, and we have the idea that kids need to always obey their teachers and that there's no pushback and it's everybody's kind of sitting down, doing the right thing. That's not the reality. It might work in school because there's so many kids and there's kind of an order to the classroom. But the reality is that your children aren't going to see you like separately from a parent. You're their teacher and their parent simultaneously, which means pushback is normal, and you're going to have your kids push back.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And so I think just kind of detoxing from, I don't want to, it's not a toxic thing, but kind of realigning your perspective to a more organic perspective as far as what homeschooling is. It shouldn't look like what it does at school. And I think that will relieve a lot of people's fears.
Yeah. I mean, unlike Jana, I was not homeschooled.
Right.
So yeah, I have this idea of what school should look like that I had to get rid of, in order to really embrace homeschooling. And we call the detox time. You got to detox from that idea. And so maybe your kids have to detox from what they had, that school experience they had.
Yeah.
But, you know, also some of these confessions are, you know, I don't have her write out all the history, or worried about the quality of education. You know what? Kids are learning all the time. Everything that we're doing is learning life skills, watching documentaries together, watching videos, movies. So most people want their kids to enjoy learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big reason why we homeschool. So keeping that, you know, why we homeschool at the forefront can really help from getting stressed out about those things, you know, because ultimately we're not going to enjoy learning if it's just checking the boxes and getting stuff done.
Right. The amount of worksheets and work that you do does not equal learning.
Right.
And so kids learn in many different forms. And in fact, we had a confession that we thought weren't confessions. They're great ideas. One of them was, I have my daughter help teach. This is amazing. I think that when you can teach a subject, that means you've learned it. And if your daughter is teaching, that means she knows what she's doing and she has fully learned and mastered whatever it is that you're having her teach. So having older siblings teach is great. It helps you. And that's one of the beautiful things about homeschooling, is that we can work as a team, as a family. And, you know, we take turns reading aloud. We do chores. My kids set up our whole co-op yesterday, and I don't know what I would do without them. You know, they just know what to do, and they're amazing now. And we're just not used to that, I think, in our society, having our kids work alongside of us. But it's a good thing.
Yeah. Here's another great one. When the instruction guide said to write a limerick, I told her that limericks often have swear or potty humor to get her interested enough to give it a go. Isn't that great?
I think that's no shame in that. I mean, you got to use your parent intuition to do what works for your family.
And make it fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've got to make it fun. We would love to know what was your why. So chat on the side and let us know why you're homeschooling, and also what you are still figuring out.
Yeah,
that's good.
We'd love to know.
You know, Jimena, you were speaking about our society not being used to having our children work alongside of us. That's exactly what we did when we were an agricultural society. In the home, the family did everything together, right? So it's almost like returning to a more traditional type of home structure, that we are doing more things together instead of having everyone have a separate life, that we are doing alongside each other. We're actually doing work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I would also say there was one here about not writing all the history, you know, answers down. Well, there's lots of ways to assess whether our kids are learning. And the beauty of homeschooling and being with your kids all day is you know what they know. We're learning alongside our kids. So discussions, oral question and answer times, those are great ways to assess how your kids are doing. It doesn't have to always be quizzes or writing assignments and worksheets, although there's a place for those. I think even kids, it's called narration, a student narration. You read something and you have them tell it back to you. That's a great way to know, okay, they're tracking, they're learning.
Yeah. And then to the confessions that said, I have no idea how I'm doing. And, you know, the person who has the special ed resources, but still she feels like there's some needs that are not being met. We would say to you, surround yourself with other homeschool parents that are like-minded and that maybe have special needs kids. And you guys can work together. We have done that. It's been so life-changing to have each other like grade our kids' essays sometimes and work, because it's good for them to get another perspective. And then also I can see how her kids that are the same age are doing. And that helps me, not in a toxic comparison way, but to see, oh, they also hate math. Right. They also hate doing their math every day. Oh, okay. So my kids are not like bad or weird, you
but
know?
also developmentally. Like I
Right.
know sometimes I'll think, okay, you know, my daughter, she's this age, and
Right.
maybe the other kids in her grade, she's a little young for her grade. So just it helps to have, you know, friends around with similar age kids that you can kind of, you know, realize, okay, that's normal for this time in their development.
Yeah, so that's really important. And I know during COVID, it's a little trickier to get together with people, but you know, Facebook forums are amazing. I've gotten so much support from that. And also, you can join our Chips and Salsa community that we have on Facebook. It's a private group. And what we want is for people to feel, you know, supported and encouraged. And also, we have things, you know, on Instagram as well. So,
There's lots of resources,
yeah.
Yeah.
even during a pandemic.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, we asked what made parents feel the most satisfied. An overwhelming amount of people said they feel the most satisfied when they see how much their children are learning, enjoying learning, engaged in learning, making connections, and making progress. In fact, one mom confessed, "I'm a little bit glad schools closed due to COVID, or I would have never tried homeschooling." And Gwen said, sorry, it wasn't Gwen, it was Sarah. She said she originally started homes just to avoid online drama, but they're going to continue because kids love the shorter days and learning together.
Yay.
So good. I love that. Well, you know, that's what homeschooling is all about. Enjoying learning. And I mean, I always say I have a second chance at learning all of these great things along with my kids. And once they learn how to learn, they can learn anything for the rest of their lives. And so, you know, really focusing on this is so good. And we have a few statistics here for you because we just want you to know it's not just our opinion.
Right.
Research is out there that's saying that homeschooling is good. So, the National Home Education Research Institute reports that children who are educated at home typically score 15 to 30% higher than public school kids on standardized academic achievement tests.
It's amazing.
It is, because we don't even give a lot of tests in
Right.
homeschool usually.
Which shows that you don't have to be a teacher to teach your kids. You're just teaching them how to learn.
Yeah, and this is true of students who are taught by parents with or without formal education. So it doesn't matter if you're a doctorate degree teaching your kids or just a high school graduate.
Yeah.
Not just, but, you know, no matter what your education was. And the students whose parents fall within a wide range of income brackets. So it really doesn't distinguish.
Yeah.
So
Another
I think
statistic.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Another statistic is that homeschool students also score above average range on their SATs and ACTs. And these are really important tests to get into college. Although, I mean, for some people.
Well, they're starting to talk about doing away with some of those.
I was going to say,
Right.
Some of them are doing away, which, you know, I'm okay with. But there's another study conducted by Michael Kogan in the University of St. Thomas. It revealed that homeschool students graduated college at a rate of 66.7%, which is almost 10% higher of students that came from traditional schooling. So there you go. If you're looking for stats, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I will say in my experience, when I went to take the ACTs before going to college after homeschooling for almost the 5 years, I didn't do very well. But once I got into classes, I excelled. I finished college in 3.5 years, then went on for my master's. Those statistics that say we can test well, I'm a testament to if you have children who do not test well, that doesn't mean they aren't learning and graduating with degrees.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we put too much on the tests. Some of those statistics prove that we don't test our kids a whole lot, but when we are testing what they're learning, their ability to learn, because we're teaching learning, not teaching to pass a test.
Correct. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. All right. We're ready for the next group. Here we go. I buy all the things, but I don't get to use them all. Spanish hasn't happened, and art is infrequent. I'm impressed that she even has art on here. We are bare bones over here. Another one states, history can take up a lot of time because it's so much reading, but it's bittersweet because it has improved our son's reading skills in a way we never thought he'd be able to do. And ever since I injured myself and had surgery, I haven't been able to do my morning basket and world history with the big kids. I have assigned the readings to my kids to read items individually, and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that is okay. And we buy a lot of things that we don't use. I have a whole stack of educational games that have not even been opened. I ordered this papyrus kit when we were doing ancient Egypt that never got opened.
Right.
And that's why it's important to find your why. And actually, Gwen put her homeschool why here: to raise an adult that feels empowered through their learning, to realize knowledge is a lifelong tool set that makes themselves and the world better. Yes, we
Gwen.
fully agree with that.
And then two more. What was this one? Sharon. So we were fed up with tablet virtual school. Yes. In the spring in our district, dragging their feet about doing in person or not. So we found Bookshark. Yay, Sharon. We love Bookshark. We've been enjoying it for many of those same reasons mentioned above. Being consistent is so important. I don't think back and forth about from tablet to in-person would be good. Yeah. So hard for so many families out there.
Yeah. And then Alicia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Alicia or Alicia. People mispronounce my name all the time, so I understand. She said, we wanted to have the quality time together. Yes, to foster a love of learning in them and explore more what they wanted to learn more about. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility that comes with it, and we love that.
Yay.
Yes to all of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why we say, if you have a strong why, it's going to get you through the bad days. It's going to get you through the times where you feel like quitting. And when you focus on the fun memories, the quality time, the love of learning, then everything else just becomes normal, right? Normal life.
Yeah. We like to say too, you don't have to finish. First of all, most schools don't finish the curriculum, right? So there's no obligation to finish every single thing that's in your curriculum. Most curriculums have more stuff, right, than you're ever going to get to anyways. But life happens. So there's no shame. The lady that had the surgery, yes, have your other kids read and do their projects because you need to recover. So huge events in life like a baby or moving, a death in the family, sickness, even financial hardships. I mean, these things can really, interfere, but life continues and your learning continues. So, that's character building when you're making adjustments and the kids have to step in and help out. That's all like important life lessons that you're learning together. So it's not all about just the schoolwork.
Yeah.
And I would say cut out things that don't always work, right? What do we always say?
Yeah. Stick to the 3 R's.
The reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah. If you have those down, you're going to be good.
Yeah. One participant said, I stopped doing first grade science and Bible in October. And another one said, we haven't done formal history once this year. Well, that's not necessarily bad because those are, optional. But also remember that homeschooling, it doesn't have to look like traditional school, like worksheets and tests, right? So, maybe you don't do worksheets and tests for your history, but you do projects and you watch documentaries. At the elementary and even middle school level, it's about exploring. And they say that when kids are exploring with science and hands-on activities and stuff, all the other subjects, really open up for them. So, and historical fiction, reading together, all of that is learning history and science too. It doesn't have to look traditional.
Yeah, you can mix things up and combine, and saves you time, and you're learning both,
Yeah.
And don't think that they have to learn everything. I mean, how many of us remember everything we learned in school? I think sometimes there's this like idea of, oh, but they need to know X, Y, and Z, and they have to have, you think that they're just going to retain everything like a computer, and it's going to stay in there and they're going to spit it out. That's not, it's not the way it works. Sometimes that's how I think. That's how ridiculous I am. But, it builds, right? And it's the skill of learning that we want to teach them. So we can't stress that enough.
We'd love to know what you guys enjoy teaching or what you enjoy learning with your children. So give us a subject in the chat box so we know what you guys are doing with your kids that is working well. All right, we've got another confession group. I often think that someone else could do a better job at teaching my kids. I feel stuck. Another one states, my kids do a whole lot of electronics at the moment because we just moved.
Yeah. Well, somebody else could do a better job. I really doubt that. And the reason why I want to say that is because you are the best teacher for your child. You don't need a credential. You don't need a teaching background. You have been the best teacher for your child since the beginning, right? And they are looking to you to learn. And so they've been learning from you from day one. And no one knows your child better than you do. That's just the truth. And so you get to be with them at each stage as they're developing, and you get to see the changes. You get to see their growth. You get to see where they're lacking and what you need to work on. A teacher that knows them for 1 year sees very little of that. And they're not really focused on the whole child. Usually they're focused just on academics and the things that they need to report, right, to their boss. So I really want to stress that you do not need to be a teacher, and you are the best thing for your child.
Yeah, so important. And then to beware of comparison, right? That can be such a trap. And I've had to really, with 4 kids, not compare each of my kids to each other as well, especially being so close in age. Sometimes I forget that developmentally, my 13-year-old and my 12-year-old are in different places. And even though they're learning together, kind of the same subjects, but they're different, developmentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I want to talk about electronics for a minute.
The electronics are such a problem.
I know. So again, Grace, you just moved. It's okay.
Yeah.
We always tell parents of like small babies and preschool that have preschoolers and older kids, it's okay that you put your preschooler in front of the TV to watch Sesame Street.
Yes.
Or, Word, whatever.
That was part of my daughter's routine. When
Absolutely.
all 3 brothers were homeschooling, part of her routine was, an hour of TV.
Yeah. And you guys have so much more. I mean, we didn't have all these apps and all this stuff,
Right.
that there are now. But Little Einsteins was like a constant for me. And, it's okay to work some TV time into the routine or electronic time into the routine. Now, I know this is a problem, and honestly, we hate it like so much because it's getting harder and harder to control, especially with teenagers. Right now, they have phones and they got their Chromebook and all this stuff. So just know that there are things that you can use. We don't have it figured out. Like, we're not here to give you advice on that because we still figuring it out.
Yeah.
But definitely, there are ways that you can cut off their Wi-Fi. And I have like a limit that's through Google Family where they just have like a limit for different apps. I can limit the time on each app. And I know they have that for Apple too, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you could limit the
Screen
amount
time.
of time total that they spend on their phone. So that's been good. But the best thing that we have seen is that they realize how much time they're spending and that they learn how to regulate. Because I know my kids don't feel good when they've been on the computer all day long. And then when there's been times where I'm like, no screens, for a day, they're like, oh, I feel so good, Mom. I'm like being creative. I'm doing all this stuff. So it's a skill. We're in this different era now where we have to show our kids how to regulate themselves, you know, as they get older. So when they're young, you got to control it. As they get older, you got to walk with them and coach them for them to figure it out. We got to figure it out for ourselves.
Well, yeah, you know what we model,
Yeah.
our behavior really models what we want, you know. And that was in that documentary we were watching about, you know, the kids are watching us and how we use our phones and how we use electronics. But you know what I'm finding with teenagers is I'll say, hey, no more screen time. Well, I have an assignment due.
Right.
You know, or you told me to work on this.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
and I need my computer for it. And I'm like, you know, it's just the reality of where we're at.
Yeah, it's hard. So I would just say continue to seek support, and it's like this big experiment for all of us. Like we're all trying to figure it out. What's your experience, Jana, with that?
Oh, well, actually, last night, my 15-year-old said, Mom, go to bed. Get off your computer. Shut it down. You've been on that too long today. So they are seeing what we are modeling to them. My girls, they go through spurts where they do a lot of streaming, and then they think that learning to self-regulate is starting because they'll do it and then they will be done for a while.
Yeah. And they're 15.
They're 15.
Yeah, same as our oldest.
Now, my 11-year-old, she's a magician because I will say, you need to pick up your book. I know you have some chapters to read. Caveat, I don't want to see a phone in your hand. Well, I'll get to working and I'm busy, so another confession, right? I turn around and while she doesn't have her phone, she has her 3DS, which she hasn't played in years. Just so she is obeying me and not being on her phone, she's still playing a game. She's creative like that. Yeah, that kid is smart.
Right?
Kids or something else.
I know.
I have to say, my 15-year-olds the other day were singing the theme song to Little Einsteins when they were driving in the car with their friends.
Our kids sing it all the time.
Yeah, they love it.
Like now as teenagers.
Yes.
They love it. It's just such a great show.
Oh.
Well, I love these responses here in the chat. Who is that? Brooke loves teaching pre-algebra. Me too.
Oh,
Me too.
Not me.
God bless you.
You guys teach my kids.
Last week, we got together and I did some pre-algebra lessons with her son and my kids. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then Alicia says, I love teaching history because of Book Shark. Yes, me too. History is our favorite because the historical fiction and the themes all going together makes it so much fun.
Yes. And it's redeemed it for us because we didn't love history before. In fact, I was looking at old report cards from my high school. I got a D in history and I actually got like an F on my like IGCSE exam, which are these like, you know, European exams or whatever that I had to take. I don't know. I don't even know what I did, but the teacher was so annoyed with me. He's like, you just don't care. I'm like, I don't understand anything that you're saying. I didn't know how to think like that, you know? And so now I'm like loving it. That's our topics of conversation at the dinner table and
Right.
everything.
Well, Book Shark uses Story of the World and in some of the levels, and we've used Story of the World since kindergarten.
Yeah.
So my kids have a real chronological idea of history and also a world view that's way beyond the United States. So they've read about countries all over the world. They've read stories of children from all over the world. So, you know, just that makes, when you get to high school and you're just learning history in this secluded little bubble, it doesn't make any sense, you know, so it's a big difference.
You don't apply it to your own life.
And Sharon said, we are great with reading and history, dividing and conquering. I love that. Get your husband involved. Yeah. He's been reading with my son and I read to my daughter. Yay.
Awesome. He will also take them to practice piano every day. That time helps me give me one-on-one with one or the other. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And we also enjoy art. Yeah, we love art and
That's
teaching
so good.
music. Yeah.
Well, that's what we always say. You know, maybe your spouse doesn't have time to contribute, but finding a sister or a friend or, someone else who's homeschooling is great. Sharing some of that load. It's really good.
Yeah.
We have another group of confessions. When it comes to the issue of being together all the time.
All the time.
Yes.
It's true.
Another confession was expressed like this: I need more time to myself. I adore my family, but we have so much time together. And sometimes I resent the lack of personal space. I love them so much, but I think it becomes too much sometimes, especially with work. Too much togetherness of working parents, having patience. And the last one just said, I'm over it.
We hear you. We hear you, ladies. Well, this is where we always say self-care is critical. And I'm going to be honest. Before, I used to think that self-care was going all bougie and going to get your nails done and going to a spa and all this stuff. And now in my wiser years, I have realized that self-care can look like even just getting in the shower, taking 5 extra minutes, and with a really good smelling bar of soap. You know what I mean? Like, even just, it can be whatever you make it. And we had a self-care segment on the first season of Homeschool Your Way. And we would say things, even just like organizing my Google Drive was self-care for me, at one point, or anything, like just like closing your eyes for 10 minutes, or, and so it's important. And another thing is that community is self-care.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would do without this one right here. I mean, if I'm being honest, we solve the world's problems together over a cup of coffee. We still have slumber parties. We're in our 40s and we go on girls trips and we have girls nights. And we just went out to lunch with our girlfriends on Monday because you have to give yourself the space. And I know it's harder when you are in the thick of it with babies and toddlers, but I just want to say, hold on, it gets better, because later they're going to be in their room and they're not even going to want to be with you sometimes.
Right.
So it's easier to sneak away and lock yourself in your room and be like, I need an hour. Nobody talk to me. And I'm there now, but it didn't used to always be as simple.
Well, and sometimes with the toddlers and babies, allowing yourself the luxury of saying, to your community, can you watch my kids today?
Yes.
Just for the mental health day, just for the break, not always getting a babysitter because you have an appointment or something you have to do. Like sometimes just because you want to do something.
And here's the great thing about community is, like, just on Monday, we have, mostly teenagers, and they're really great, responsible teenagers. We left them all together, and one of the
homeschooling.
Homeschooling. And one of the teenagers was like, I want to watch the baby. Like, there's a toddler in our group, so that, our friend can go and have lunch. And she was so grateful for that. And the fact is that these kids, we've raised them to be responsible, and the fact that she was able to do that, get away for a couple hours to go lunch with homeschool kids watching, the toddler who's very used to being with us, So that's what community is all about, is you lean on one another. So
there are times when I'm driving and my self-care is to just tell my girls, no talking right now. My brain is racing and so many things on my to-do list, and I'm trying to organize everything in my mind. And as I'm driving with my kids from one thing to another and they're trying to talk to me, it's just like, I love you, I need silence, and that's okay.
When my kids were younger, I kept saying I was going to do this and I never did. And I'm almost like, dang, I never got around to this, but I wanted to make a hat. I wanted to make a hat that was like space themed and put it on my head when I needed space, so that my kids, when they saw it, when they're younger, they'd be like, oh, okay, mommy needs space.
great
it was like
tip
this
for those
idea
who
that I
need
had
that.
that I never did. Huh?
I said that's a great tip for those who are listening.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully somebody
Get a
will.
space hat.
Do
Will
it.
Take a picture of yourself, send it to us on social media.
Yes, we want to see that space
Super
hat.
cool. Well, it's
Absolutely.
way better than yelling at everybody,
Right?
Right? And just like, mommy needs some space.
Yeah, in fact, you just put it on, and then they know when not to talk to you.
Well, I love some of the self-care tips in the chat because, it doesn't have to be expensive. And what is it, Sashi?
Yes.
Takes a long bath.
Heck yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And drinking tea and coffee on the back porch and just having some alone time and fresh air. It sounds awesome. Like I've tried to catch more sunsets this year because most of the time I'm looking at it through the kitchen window while doing dishes. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stop. The sunset's so fast. I'm going to go outside and enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah, there's coffee and silent time in the mornings. Oh, I get it. I treasure my morning times.
Yes.
And watching a movie or show by myself, having a long chat with a friend. Yes. And doing my own nails.
Yes.
We do our own nails. We do our own nails. And to me, that's self-care too, because you're also saving some money.
Yes.
And plus, I don't want to have to go make an appointment, go somewhere. We'll leave that for some luxury times. Another self-care tip is to give yourself cut-off times. And I'm preaching this to myself because I've go through seasons where I'm really good at this and then seasons where I'm really bad at this. And just make sure that you have like a cutoff time. Like, I'm not going to keep working past 8 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
8 to 10 is going to be the time where I sit with my husband, or I just sit by myself and watch a show, or I do whatever so that you can recuperate. Because there are days where I work like really from the moment I get up until I go to bed, and I'm so exhausted, and that's not good for anybody. So if you're an achiever like me, just watch for that and make sure that you're not overdoing yourself.
Well, and Jana's like me. Well, and like Sharon, she says she goes for a run while the kids are swimming. Yes, we got to do things that give us life, whether it's, a hobby, getting out in the garden, taking a walk, a run, just sitting in silence, whatever it is, making room for that is important.
Sharon wants to make sure that we don't think she's leaving her kids alone swimming.
Swimming lessons.
Oh, we were about to report
I
to Sharon.
assumed that it was swimming lessons.
I didn't, but I wasn't judging.
But, they must be really strong swimmers. I don't know.
That's awesome. Okay, and then also don't be afraid to have rest and reset days. I have these a lot because there are times where I feel like it's like the level is here, and I'm like, if I keep going, I'm going to explode and have a meltdown.
Or the kids.
Right, yeah. Or I feel burned out. So then I just say, you know what? Today is going to be a reading day, a nothing day. And I don't do it as often as I should. But there are days where I'm like, we're resetting today. We're just going to, we're going to reset. I need to get, some alone time. I need to focus on my original vision. It's important to reset like your why too. And why you do what you do. So I call those reset days.
Yeah. Well, and it could be a game day.
Yeah.
Or just mixing in a game in your routine to make things fun, to break things up. It helps the kids, but it also helps us.
Yeah.
To kind of take a breath and not take everything so seriously.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, we are nearing the end of our time together. I just want to ask any of our viewers if they had any questions that we could answer for them, or a confession they wanted to throw in that we can read aloud. We really enjoyed our time together. I hope that you have felt some community within this hour. Chips and Salsa ladies, you guys are an amazing group. An example of what community can look like to homeschool parents.
Oh, thank you, Jana. Yeah, it was so great. Thank you, ladies, for chatting with us and putting stuff in the chat. It really made it fun.
Yeah, we loved it. And again, we want to invite you to be part of our community by visiting us on Facebook and Instagram. And again, we have a private community, and also writing in for our podcast episodes. We're looking for people to give us their hacks and their inspirational quotes on our season 2 podcast, Homeschool Your Way by Bookshark. We just love hearing from you guys and being a community of amazing boss moms together, homeschooling our kids and changing the world.
Yeah. Oh, thank
One
you,
child at a
Sarah.
time.
One child at a time.
Right. Thank you, Sarah.